Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk. Hey, welcome back to the Mental Perk podcast. We have a special guest today, Richard Ashcroft. He is also known as Trey. So he's been with the Forney Police Department for 5 years, the Garland Police Department for 23 years, and he has served on the SWAT team for 16 and a half years. So he has so much experience and stories to share with us, and we're super excited to talk to him.
And he's also the president of
the Garland Police Association.
He's the president of the Garland Police Association.
We are so excited to have you.
Yeah, we're so excited,
Thank you
Trey.
guys for having me.
And you don't see it, guys, but he has this beautiful wife behind him, and she's here to cheer us on.
Yeah, she definitely makes him look good. Just saying. Yeah.
Why do you think I married her?
Well, good
absolutely.
choice. Good choice. Okay, so talk to us about your career. What got you started in what you do, your passions? What triggered this?
Well, I tell you what, it goes back a long ways. When I was a teenager, my mom used to be the traditional substitute teacher kind of deal and wanted more. And so needless to say, my dad was more of a traditional kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't work out well when she went from being a substitute teacher to a dispatcher and then went to the academy and became a police officer.
Wow.
Good for her, woman power. I love that.
She's a first
It's awesome.
responder from start to finish. She's teaching kids. She's doing that. And then to go from that to being a 911 operator.
Yeah, she was the 911 operator, and then she was the first female officer in Forney. And so
What? We got to get her on the show.
I
I know, right? She's got a lot of stories too.
Wow.
Yeah,
And then so I was a teenager while she was a police officer. So you can imagine what that was like as a teenager with a hot rod car. So, but anyway, no, I was very, very impressed with her. She actually inspired me to do it because she chased her dream, and no matter what the cost. And I remember her working deep nights, and then on the weekends she would work a part-time, since there were no part-time security jobs in Forney.
Right.
She would go work the Vineyards in Oak Cliff at night.
Oh, my goodness.
Back in the 80s, yes.
They needed security for that alone, right?
Yes, exactly. So, but no, anyway, I did a ride-out with her when I was probably 19 or 20.
Okay.
And I became a volunteer fireman for Forney when I was 21.
Okay.
And did that for, a good while. But some of my friends were also police officers. I go do ride-outs also. So I kind of got bit by the bug.
Yeah.
And so I was a mechanic at a Chevrolet dealership in Dallas at the time. And I started going to the academy at Eastfield at night. I did that for a year and started reserving for Forney in 96, which my mom by that point was a judge.
Wow.
And gave me my oath of office in March of 1996.
Wow, that is so cool.
That is really amazing.
Yeah.
I love that story.
It was pretty cool. And then I stayed there in Forney for a while. I left probably a $70,000 a year job to go make $19,000 a year at Forney PD full time in 98. Yeah. And
That is crazy. And, I don't think the young people out there know that salaries were really that low back
Oh, my
then.
gosh.
Oh, my gosh. I remember my husband starting in the low 20s. So
Yes.
it's like,
It's
it's
gone up a
crazy.
lot.
Yeah.
And so I remember doing that for another three and a half years, and I left to go to Garland, and where I still work today in 2001. I got hired right after 9/11, October of 2001.
Wow. So what made you transition from one department to another? Just more action?
I had a good friend that used to work with DPS out in my area. Good man. His name is Willie Hawkins. And I would still talk with him, still good friends with him to this day because he's a detective now at Garland. And he said, hey, you need to come do a ride-out, come check it out. Garland's a really awesome place. And so one of the guys in the gang unit's name is Blaine Ralston. And so I went to high school with Blaine. So I said, hey, can I come do a ride-out? And so I did one ride-out, man. I was like, yeah, I need to come over here. And so I went through the hiring process. It took about 6 months.
Okay.
And got hired, like I said, in October of 2001.
Well, I can say Garland to me, and I'm not partial to Garland, but they've got a reputation of being the baddest of the baddest to me. I mean, I think a lot of other departments rely on you guys for training, for the way you guys handle your tactical technique and everything. I mean, that's just, and I know nothing about law enforcement other than I have heard a lot about Garland PD just being the baddest of the baddest.
Yeah, we host a lot of SWAT schools where I'm the tear gas instructor and impact munitions instructor for TTPOA when we host one in Garland. And one of my good friends, Brandon Hernandez, is...
I know Brandon.
He's the Region 7 coordinator, so he coordinates a lot of trainings. And between him and our Lieutenant Colasanto, they know a lot of the guys in the industry, which you have a lot of Tier 1 guys that come back that are ex-SEALs or ex-Delta or whatever that come back after they retire, and now they're instructing CQB or firearms, stuff like that. So we're very fortunate to have those two guys in there to where any classes that you want to go to, we go to. And we bring that stuff back to our guys. So, yeah, we get really, really good training because we have guys that are close to that organization, TTPOA, that we're able to go do trainings wherever they may be.
Wow.
So we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, I really love that. And I think it's such an interesting career because you have to be a certain kind of person to be on a SWAT team. I mean,
well, it's best said. I heard it. This best describes it. If you're going, you have to have that mentality that if you're going to be a bear, you need to be a grizzly bear. And if you don't have that,
so. Yeah.
If you don't have that, then you don't have that kind of aggression that you need to do that.
You definitely don't want to be a panda bear. You want to be a grizzly bear.
You don't want to be a koala bear. No.
Well, she's partial to panda bears.
I'm so in love with panda bears.
You would make it. You would make it.
But I'm guarantee if I'm in trouble, I'm probably not going to call the pandas.
No. Well, I mean, if I'm stuck out in the woods, I'd rather be with a panda.
But if I'm stuck out in the wood with a serial killer, I want a grizzly bear. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So talk to me about what you're what they call them, beat cops, like you're on the streets, right?
Yeah,
so how long do you do that? And you still doing that?
I still do that.
Okay.
Now. I started there doing that, and then I went to we have a neighborhood police officer unit that basically is in charge of working in liaison with crime watch groups, stuff like that.
I've done that.
To help eradicate crime in their neighborhoods.
Yep.
And that was a really fulfilling job where you see stuff go from start to finish. Like, for instance, when I worked in the area of Derry and Miller, back then it was called District 35, which you're close to your old stomping ground.
Uh-huh.
I would get a complaint from like a crime watch group about maybe house selling narcotics. So I would I'd try to do a couple of traffic stops, or whatever, and try to get some intel, whatever, and then I'd get with narcotics. And then they would start working it, and next thing you know, they say, all right, hey guys, we have a warrant. We get the pager would go off and be at the PD for a briefing at 3 o'clock. We're going to hit this house, and lo and behold, it's the house that I turned over to them a couple of months ago. So I get to see it from start to finish. So, yeah, it was very rewarding.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Very rewarding to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And did that several times.
Wow. So you went from that to what made you decide to do SWAT?
I joined the team in 2007. It was, I don't know, just to me, especially at our department, it's to me, it's like, I don't want to sound corny, but it is kind of a calling. It's got to be something that you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's got to be something that you're willing to sacrifice for. Because believe me, when I tell you, there was 3 years when I first got on the team, I wasn't home. 08, 2009, 2010, I wouldn't see my ex, back when we were married, I wouldn't see her till the weekends. And that went on for about 3 years. Wow. I mean, we were that busy. We were busier than Dallas SWAT. Because we would do over 100 warrants a year. I mean, dozen call-outs plus. I mean, there was always something going on. And then after time, that builds resentment.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I've learned this, which is why me and TK here, we talk about everything, about our days, whatever, because if you don't share that stuff with them, at least, most of it, you don't have to leave, you can leave some of the gory details out, obviously. But, if you just bottle it up, then next thing you know, you don't share anything, and then they start to resent that. If they have an understanding of what you're going through and what you've had to deal with, or why you're that busy and the good that you're doing, and you share that with them, then the resentment may come way later or not at all. But if you don't share it with them, they just look at you as being gone.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Carla and I just did a mental health training for Salina Fire Department, and we had their spouses join us. And it's so important that you just said that because that is the exact same thing they talked about, but we also emphasize the importance on the spouses being able to share with the men that are out in the field everything they're seeing because, it's a different kind of hard day, but it's still a hard day.
Correct.
And so there's got to be a good open line of communication between both parties to where she understands what you go through on a daily and then vice versa.
I mean, definitely the statistics for relationships and people in your field are
It is, and I will be honest with you. That is definitely, I think. There are other contributing factors. I mean, as well. I mean, obviously, but that being said, it just definitely the time away and to be on SWAT, the level of commitment it takes just to train up because our school is very, very physically and mentally strong. I mean, tough. You've got to be very strong-minded and be at the peak of your physical shape to make it through this week of what we call NDOC week. I mean, it's very, very tough. I think I started on Monday at 205 pounds, and by Friday, at 190.
Oh, we got to do that.
Oh,
we got to.
I need that going on.
The ladies need that for a weight loss program. I'm in.
You
when can we do it?
Hey, we'll sign you up next time. But it is. It's. You ask anybody. All of our guys. All of us have had to go through it. it doesn't matter what year you got on, everybody has to pay this price. Entry fee is very expensive, and there's no refunds. So if there's any part of it, and then you have a year after if you make the tryout, and then after that one-day tryout, it is nowhere indicative of the mental and physical torture that you're going to endure that week, to see if you can mentally and physically handle the stress and being able to go do this job.
So what kind of mental health
I'm
training
like,
is there?
Tell me what's going on here.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is we're real big in using the simulations like stress inoculation, stuff like that, for the training aspect of it. You know, they shoot the little paint wax pellets, marking rounds or whatever. So, I mean, between that and then them to push you to make decisions and stuff for 12, 14 hours, 5 days in a row, and they're keeping you up, 12, 14 hours, there. And then so you're only getting about 5-6 hours sleep a night and stuff. By the time you get home, get everything cleaned up, eat, and get all your stuff, gear ready for the next day. So the school is meant to just tax you physically and mentally to see if you've got what it takes and won't quit. Wow. And so that's why, and then once you get through with that, then you still have a year of probation to make sure that you can respond to the training. And so you can be cut at any given time with that. So, like I said, the entry fee is very expensive.
Do you have any psychological tests or things that they do for people who want to be on like the SWAT team?
No, I'm going to say a psych. You do an initial psych to get hired on at the department.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So, hopefully at that point if anything else that's going to rear its head, that maybe you don't have what it takes up top, then it's going to show fast. The process it does work. It's where some people just can't handle the stress of it, and it shows fast.
So what is the rate of people that drop out of this?
Well, the last couple
field?
of deals, people have I think they've become better prepared.
Okay.
Because I know in years past, usually we'd have a 50% attrition rate, at least
Wow.
But then again, we'd have other agencies used to that would come to, they would want to go to a SWAT school.
Okay.
And so they would come to ours. And then, some of those weren't quite ready for it.
Wow.
And stuff. So, but back in the day, but now the last two classes of NDOC week, it's just been our guys, and all of them, I think one before last, I think 9 guys made it, and the last one, I think 8. So we've had good luck lately to where people are better preparing themselves for the mental and physical rigors of that NDOC week.
Wow, that's interesting because that's I just think of buds. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I know it's a way different deal, but like they are so strict on training, and it's high percentage of dropout rate because they just can't hang with the mental and the physical aspect of it. But it sounds like it's a short, quick course of that kind of training.
Down
where
and
you're,
dirty, yep.
And when you're sleep deprived,
Well,
and then you're having to make some very critical decisions.
Correct.
At the last minute.
There's always scenarios. There's always stuff to learn. There's always stuff going on. And then, so that being said, it is very physically challenging, but also, too, it is mentally challenging just because, it's one thing to be up at work 12 hours a day. Mm-hmm. It's a whole other thing to be at work 12 hours a day, and then you've run, and then you're doing PT in and out of it for the most part. Burpees, you name it. Punishment for this, punishment for that.
That's punishment and now burpees.
I know. I hate burpees. Hate running stairs, hate burpees. But that being said, though, it's a whole different ballgame when you're doing 10 to 12 hours of physical stuff, carrying things, and then just being in an office or just being out on the street for 12 hours.
Well, and I've even heard that when you're at a gun range, the way you train at a gun range, even like if you've got an active shooter or something, it's different when you have someone that's just in position just shooting at a target versus running a few laps and then making them shoot out of breath. And keeping it together because they're so shaken up of it. There's so many different ways you can train someone. So I'm assuming you guys go through all those scenarios to make sure that they are ready to roll.
Well, we do an alert class, which alert is the industry standard for active shooter training, pretty much that was formed after Columbine.
Okay.
All right, so pretty much everybody, I think pretty much nationwide, it's a nationwide kind of training program. Mm-hmm. It puts everybody pretty much on the same page. That way, say, for instance, if I'm here and this comes out and I need to go to Rowlett to help them, because they have something going on, then because I'm just down the road, the area I work is like Bobtown and 30 area now, to where I can just hop on the bridge and I'm there and I can get there and we all can go by the same standard. Everybody, if I know, hey, what some of the commands are, what we're doing, everybody's on the same sheet of music when it comes to that. And then after Uvalde, they passed the bill to where everybody, including the chiefs of police, all the way down, if you're a police officer, you have to go through this alert training within the next 2 years.
Wow.
And our department is taking a really aggressive stance on it to where They want everybody in our department done by December this year.
I love
I
that.
think those are some really positive changes. But, I think it's interesting the change in police departments over the years, right? And how police officers are perceived and how they're treated and all of those different things. So walk us through some of those situations.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because in a mental health aspect of it, when I first got into this line of work, back in 96, 97, it was a different mindset, I guess you would call it, or it was viewed as a different mindset where now it's people have learned. I mean, you got guys that have been overseas. We've been at war for over 20 years. All right. People that are coming back, a lot of PTSD out there and stuff like that. Back in those days, you carried your own water. You suffered in silence. You kept it to yourself because they would view you weak. You don't want to be viewed as weak, or you're having a mental breakdown, or you're going to the rubber gun squad, or what have you. To where now it's more. Hey, they've learned pain shared is pain divided. Went to a class, actually a seminar, and I read this book that this guy, and his name is, if you don't mind me bringing it up, it's called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, a guide for officers and their families. And he was really, really good. His name is Kevin Gilmartin. And I read the book, and I went to the seminar because Fort Worth PD put it on, and our chief made our entire SWAT team go.
Wow,
and so,
I love
and he
that.
went, and all of us went, and it was actually very, very informative. And he broke it down to where, like, you could be just normal day. You're at, say, a low level, and you're just going to another call or whatever. Then next thing you know, you're going to be involved in a chase or going to an armed robbery. You're chasing people, or in a shootout, what have you. And your adrenaline goes up here. We have a career going like this, up and down. There's no even kill. And one of the things he talked about was, physical fitness. He said that's a big thing that helps keep everything on even keel, and that's why I still work out, every week.
You'll see a picture. He's a buff guy.
Yeah,
Buff
and there is a correlation between physical health and mental health. Yeah,
correct. And so I learned a lot from that class. So that being said, now it seems like there's more attention being brought to people. Hey, you may, especially those poor guys that have been overseas serving our country, they've seen some horrific stuff, and everything, and then 20 years of it. Okay, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
I mean, think about how long World War II and Vietnam lasted, and those were bad. So think about that to where you look at it now. You have to have a better program in place that's going to help people deal with the mental anguish that they have for whether it be seeing, a couple of mine, involve kids. Nobody wants to see a dead child.
No.
And so that being said, you've got to have some kind of outlet, whether it be going hanging out with your buddies, having a beer or whatever, or going home talking to your wife about it, say, hey, I need a minute, or whatever, just for myself, and then talking it out. That will help you, catharticize that stuff, if you will, and because everybody's psychological pain threshold it may be different from one person to the next.
And it doesn't make them worse or better, right? We don't have to judge it on that, but you're right. Everyone processes differently.
And I think a lot, you just said something that's very key. You said, whether it's going home and telling my wife, hey, I just need a minute. That right there is key.
Yes.
Because you're allowing her to know, hey, nothing's wrong with you. I'm just trying to process what I'm going through. Correct. And she has an understanding that, okay, he needs his time and it's not anything she's done. That right there alone, to me, is huge.
And that's a big part of what we do in our training.
We do.
Teaching
Because
those responses. So
I definitely learned from that. I mean, from being divorced a couple of times, I mean, if you keep all of it bottled up inside, if you don't share some of the stuff, and like I said, it does build resentment. It will in both of you. Then to where then next thing you know, the job is more important to you than I am. No, we all got to have a job.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This is my profession. This is what you knew.
Right.
And then, but you can't come later on in the game and say, hey, you have to quit or we're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't do well with ultimatums.
Yeah. And it's one thing for her to go, hey, this is what you knew, but she knows because of what you're telling her.
Correct.
And she only knows what you're telling her. And I often tell people, process it or process you. And that's literally, I think, the whole deal is if you don't process it, it will process you. It's just a matter of time.
Yes.
It's when it comes to rear its head. So I think that's so important that you said that because we see so many people. And also, too, like you said, these combat people or you guys, if there's not that counseling issued, you'll see a lot of people, they come home when the adrenaline dump. When it's high, it's low, it's high, it's low. They don't know how to come back into civilian world and really.
I don't know how those guys acclimate themselves back to civilian life after being over there. and being in that for so long, especially.
And I don't think we're doing enough.
We aren't.
No, we're not.
Within the military to really get people back in the right place.
Well, and to me, I often question. I mean, like I said, I don't have any real experience with it, but I know that we just lost a good friend, Officer Tommy Barnes, to cancer, and I believe part of that was during COVID. He was misdiagnosed by the VA, and so I think that we have so many people that need, I think just better help, both physically and mentally, that would help them.
Oh, yeah, I believe that too, 100%. So I would like to know kind of how do you get people recruited nowadays, because there's so much that the adjustments our legal system is making to deal with kind of the current times. And so we're seeing that it is harder to recruit for departments across the nation.
Well, across the nation, if you put it in perspective like this, because this is, me and the rest of our association board, we had a meeting with the city manager, and I told him, I said, look, here's the problem. We're number 9 or number 10 on the pay scale in the DFW area. I said, that's why you're having to give 2 and 3 tests to maybe get 8 or 9, 10 people because if you think about this, 20 people will go, if you get 20 people good out of a test, they go to background, probably only 9 or 10 are going to make it all the way through the process. Between polygraph, psychological evaluation, and everything checks out good. You're only going to have probably about 10 or 12 maybe out of 20. And then out of that, how many are you going to lose in the academy? Because our academy is still pretty physical. I mean, the UPT, while you're there, 5.5 months to get through the academy, you're going to be PTing in the morning and stuff. So, and then there's any number of places, firearms or whatever, the state test, the TCOL test. If you don't pass that stuff, then they fire you immediately. So by the time you get those 10 or 12 to field training, you may be down to 7 or 8. And then out of those 7 or 8, you're only going to have you may not have everybody respond to the training because this job's just not for everybody. You've got to have, first of all, common sense. And some people just don't get it, don't pick up on it. And so that being said, by the time you get through, you may have 3 to 5. All right. And then when you had 10 people retire that year, you're in a deficit.
Yeah.
And then you're not even catching up with last year. And then not to mention people that go to work for other agencies or go to, like, we had one guy go to the FBI. I mean, and you have some people that, get terminated, and stuff. So that being said, you can go right now and go to a month-long CDL class and go make $85,000 a year. And if you want to do long haul, maybe $100,000 a year. I said, so why would you want to do this job where you have to go through 6 months of rigorous training? All right. And then you have to run the risk of being sued. And in today's volatile society, possibly being indicted. Yeah. Because you made a mistake, or even nowadays, maybe if you didn't even make a mistake, it's just how it looked, in the public perception.
Optics,
Yeah, the statistics showing early retirement, and then also just not being able to recruit because it's happening everywhere. Exactly. All the departments are lower than they need to be.
Exactly, and especially also, too, don't forget the fact that you may even get shot at or run over. Yeah. So why would you want to go do that for the same amount of money? You can just, do something relatively easier. Yeah. So that being said, we finally came. That's why we actually we fought and got an 11% pay raise. The actually didn't have to fight. The chief was on board with it. The city manager was on board with it. We presented a lot of stats from neighboring departments and stuff, and so we went up 11%. So that helped us. The last 2 tests we've had, we've actually got to think like more than 20 good applicants to go and apply with us. So hopefully it'll catch up. That's going to have to be the current trend, though, because if you want people to be professional police officers that have to have constant training and to be the best, then or to be at least up to a certain standard.
I think we do have a call coming in.
We do?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hold on just one second. We're going to touch back on that. Okay. Hey, I think this is Donnie from Dallas is what I just read. Is this Donnie?
Hello, is this the mental perk?
This is the mental perk. Hey, Donnie. So we have a Trey here. He is on the Garland SWAT team. And so did you have a question for him?
I do have a question for the officer there, but it's Brandy and Carla. You guys are fantastic at what you do.
Oh, thank you.
I love listening to your show. You guys are beautiful. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Well, Donnie, what's your question?
Is the officer listening?
Yes, I'm here, Donnie.
Hello, officer. I just have one question. You sound like an individual that must stay in great shape for what you do. I'm just curious. What What kind of workouts do you do when you got to wake up and put the boots on and the gear and everything that you do? I bet you have like bulging muscles and everything. What kind of workouts do you do?
Well, I've got this workout routine that this good buddy Anthony gave me, that if I don't do it, then he actually rides my ass pretty hard. So I got to do that. I got to do that workout routine just to try to keep up with him.
He sounds exciting. I want to have to meet him as well. It's beautiful. Thank you for what you do, sir. You're a hero. You're a big hero. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Donnie.
Have a lovely day, ladies.
You
Thanks,
too.
Donnie. Call
Thanks for
back
being a
soon.
fan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Okay.
So you have some admirers
You
already.
do have some admirers
Wow.
out there, really.
I think I know who that was.
You do?
So,
Yeah,
you know, you may get some more after we get this
Yeah.
all posted. So you never know.
Oh, my gosh.
So, we were getting back to, the whole recruiting issue and the whole change of how, you have this. I mean, there's this fear now of, if I do my job, is something going to happen to me personally?
Well, and to touch on that, because every area is different, but for instance, there are several states that are trying to do away with qualified immunity, which if you don't know what qualified immunity is, qualified immunity is like the state of Texas, we have qualified immunity, that if you don't go out of the scope of your duties and you do abide by your general orders and state law and federal law, then you cannot be sued.
Okay, well, can't that be like a broad?
Correct. Well, it does. It is a pretty good safety net.
Okay.
That does offer us some protection, but there's several states doing away with that.
Why? If they do away with it, aren't they going to have a hard time
Well, that's why
recruiting officers?
We've got a lot of officers. I think we've got some coming from California. We've actually got 2 really good officers in now from Detroit.
Yeah.
We've got numerous Chicago, you name it, NYPD.
And is it because they have done away with that and they know that they're protected here? Because I have heard a lot of California officers coming, LAPD.
Yes.
And I'm like, hey, we'll take them, right?
Plus, Texas doesn't have a state income tax like other states do.
Yeah.
That's true too.
And that is, and plus too, Texas for the most part still, not to get into politics, but still pretty much red. Where I will say this: during all the issues that we've had in society lately, the citizens of Garland have been very, very supportive of us and the police department. And to me, shout out to those people. They've stood by our side and stuff. And no matter what's going on in the rest of the country, they've been very supportive of our police.
Yeah.
And not all police officers have that. There's a lot of cities that are not necessarily supportive of the police or questioning whether, the police are the best way to handle crime. So
Correct. And so that being said, I mean, you just have to look at what's going on in the area of the world that they're at. It's going to be different than where it is where we're at. I know, the only thing I can testify to is where we're at in Garland. We've been very, very supported by our citizenry.
And I think that's so important because I think police officers, we get into this situation where, you'll see on the news something bad that's happened in one single incident, but we're not looking at all the amazing things that had happened all over the nation.
And we also, too, don't always have the facts to that one situation. Yeah. It's just limited to what the media wants us to hear and see.
There is a lot more of the tail wagging the dog these days, especially in the the general media, whether it be to the right or the left. So.
Right.
But that being said, you're right. The hundreds of thousands of times where we do the right thing, that means you're not going to hear about that. That's because we did our job. We did it correctly. But the one time you have something wrong happen, it's going to be blasted all over every major network, period, end of story. And then it takes a while to wash that tarnish off. Unfortunately, it usually takes one of us being killed in the line of duty to make the pendulum swing back the other way. Because I can remember back when, what was it? I can't remember, but there were other riots going on at that time. And the pendulum started swinging that direction, and then next thing you know, you had officers being ambushed here in Dallas. The Dallas 5 were killed, and it made the pendulum swing the other way to where people are saying, "Hey, that enough's enough. Okay, we can't have this because the only thing that stops chaos and everything is that. I mean, not to be corny, but that's the truth. I mean, to where if you don't let officers do their job without fear of being punished or imprisoned, then you're going to have a lot more restrained response.
Yeah,
law enforcement.
Which as a civilian, I want you guys to take full reign. I want you because, to me, I think back in the day and even still now for me, I don't think of it being. I'm glad that we have officers protecting us that are going to step up and handle stuff that we can't handle, right?
Correct. And the thing about it is in every line of work that's out there, you're going to have bad apples.
Sure.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of a time to find them. And I will say this, most departments, they will do the very best they can to get rid of those people to where you don't have a public safety issue. And that just sometimes it takes a little time for it to show its head.
And that's true in any field. You're going to have
Yes.
a bad apple. But there's so many hundreds and thousands of police officers making the right choices every single day. I love the stories on the media that really show the human side of officers and how they're really interacting with their community and doing all these wonderful things. And you'll see like a lady at the store who couldn't finish paying for the formula for her baby, and you'll see officers step in and take care of that, or they pull over someone and they see that they're struggling or their child needs something and they deliver it to the door the next day. I mean, there's just all these amazing stories about how officers are really trying to be there for their community and connect with them, and those just they get overlooked.
I saw
think.
one the other day where a gentleman was pulled a man over. It was very cold, like 20 degrees, and the gentleman had dementia. In his car, he just did not want to drive at night. And so he turned his car off. He didn't want to lose gas, turned his car off, and an officer pulled up and was doing just a check on him to make sure he didn't need assistance. And he knew that the guy was mentally impaired some way, but he was suffering from like Alzheimer's or something. And literally this officer, the patience this officer took with him, literally took this gentleman. The gentleman needed reassurance that he was going to be okay. He was safe. The officer did a great job. The gentleman didn't have any money, got a hold of his brother to let his brother know the situation, but needed to do something right away for this gentleman. And so the officer went to a hotel and paid for the gentleman's hotel room so he would have a safe, warm place to stay at night. That's the stuff we need to be sharing more.
I agree. And that's the thing. Like I said, good news doesn't sell. Good news doesn't, every once in a while it does. I mean, if it's something super spectacular, it does. But for the most part, it's only bad news, only bad things, or, sell, people pay attention to that. Whether it be the traumas or it be the illegal misdeeds or what have you. I mean, it's going to be something of that nature that's going to be, blasted out on every.
We glorify it.
Correct.
We glorify it.
So with that pendulum swing, and we've had that pendulum swing to where we've been kind of hyper focused on, the deeds that aren't going so well with officers. And so how do you reassure people? How do you reassure people and try to get them to see officers as the good people they are rather than...
Because the other 99.99% of us, are good officers. They want to do the right thing. Sometimes people make mistakes. That does happen. Okay?
Right.
Doesn't mean that officer is bad.
Right.
It just means they made a bad choice.
Sure.
And that does happen. For instance, prime example. Sometimes some people have a harder time dealing with stress, and maybe one day more so than the other days. The poor officer up north that thought she had her taser and accidentally shot that kid. I can tell you, she's yelling taser, taser, taser. I know that she did not mean to kill that juvenile, but she made a fatal mistake.
Yeah.
And she could be a good officer, great officer. I think she was an officer for almost 20 years.
She
or something like
was,
that,
yeah.
and made a horrible mistake. So there are good people that make bad choices. And the thing about it is, this is one line of work that you can't have a bad choice anymore, because this is the only line of work that on your first day or your last day could be a day that you could make a bad choice or be involved in a shooting, or it could take your life, or you can make a difference in somebody's life, and anywhere in between. So that being said, you have to I just want people to keep that in mind, that there are times where sometimes people don't make the right choice. All right. I personally can't stand somebody. I mean, when I was like, people say, "Hey, you want to watch a movie?" No, I'm not going to watch a movie about crooked officers. That makes me mad. That pisses me off to no end, because there are the freaking hundreds of thousands of us that are out there trying to make a difference, to do the right thing.
Right.
That I don't want any part of that. I don't want any. I don't want to watch any of that. Like
I
Training Day,
agree with that.
I won't watch Training Day. I just will not.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I feel like it's giving a bad image, or it's feeding the narrative that's already out there. Yeah, and I really do. The neat thing about it is, and Brandy and I have been around a lot of first responders, a lot of officers, and the one thing I can say is I've never met one that's not so approachable and so kind and so compassionate. I've not, you think they're going to be tough and have this tough exterior, but that's not the case.
Well, or it may have, your first impression, because I've got one in mind that you know very well that I love, and it's very, just straight-faced. You're like, there's no way I'm going to talk to this guy. I don't think he's got a personality. But then the minute you walk up to them and say, sometimes it takes you engaging the officer first for them, but they have to take every situation so serious that, like, I'm asking you, like, you got someone that comes up and I'm like, hey, thank you for doing your job. Like, how are you processing in your head? Is she going to shoot me, or she really appreciate what I do?
No, I mean, like I said, the citizens of Garland have been great. I mean, I've actually heard that quite frequently here in the last couple, 3 years, where people come up and thank you for, and I thank them for their support in return. But, that being said, though, the person that you're talking about that we both know, I'm the same way. When I'm putting on the blue suit,
I could see you being that way, probably.
It's a different person. It's time for me to go to work.
Yeah.
All right. But also, too, at work, though, I know I'm there to help people.
Yeah.
All right. You can do this job and not be a dick.
Yeah.
All right. You can do this job and help
I
people.
like that. That's a tagline right there.
I think the title of
that is going to be the title of the show.
You can do this job. There you go. But it is the truth. You can do this job and not be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if people, they need help, and then go there and you can help them. I mean, now, granted, it does have its perks. There, as far as like being able to get bad people off the street, yes, very much so. I mean, sorry, but there are some people that don't need to be among us, and they need to go to the prison.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, now because of the overcrowding and everything else, they just don't stay there in the full time. For instance, I went to trial on a deal a month and a half ago on a shooting. Happened 2 years ago, year and a half. Anyway, long story short, lovers quarrel between a lady and her girlfriend. They're at a hotel parking lot in front of this lady's kids. Her girlfriend, I guess, they get into it, they knock down, drag out in the parking lot, and actually the victim ends up winning the fist fight. Well, then the soon-to-be ex-girlfriend goes to the vehicle, gets a gun while the victim's getting her stuff out of the car, and shoots her. And when I got there, I mean, the suspect already left, but the victim's over there bleeding out. I'm sitting there watching this woman die, and because there's blood everywhere. She hit her in the femoral artery in the leg, and she's lost a lot of blood. Thank God the fire department, our fire guys are really, really good. Our paramedics actually saved her life.
Wow.
Yeah. So the lady got charged with ag assault, the deadly weapon, and the lady refused the 15-year plea deal, so it goes to trial. Well, they find her guilty, and they sentence her to 40 years. So I asked the DA, I said, so in actuality, how much of that is she going to do? And she goes, well, we've got to where now that since it's a violent gun crime, that she will have to do at least 20 years, and she'll be eligible for parole. And the lady to live through it, because, I saw the chest quit compressing. The lady quit moving. I thought I saw the life.
She's bleeding out. Yeah,
I thought she'd already bled out.
But kudos to those paramedics, to those fire department.
They did a great job.
I even see the police officers. Y'all know how to use them tourniquets. You can put them on and apply to where they're not bleeding out. And then you're trying to assess, though. You're thinking about this. You're trying to assess the whole situation around you. Exactly. Are you tunnel vision at that point, or what?
No,
are you looking at the person that's been shot and then trying to figure out? Assess if the shooter's still there? Well,
no, our 911 call they do a really good job, too, because they have a certain criteria of questions they ask when they receive, especially multiple 911 calls that this one generated, because there's like 12 or 14 people in the parking lot, right? And so that being said, they're really good, because I had dispatch notes saying about two different people that the suspect already left in the room car. So I'm still keeping a vigilant eye out, but I'm also trying to. I thought the lady initially was shot in the chest because there was like,
so much blood.
She had a deal already on her leg like that was covering it. Somebody already tied something on. I didn't see anything spraying or coming out of her leg, but her whole abdomen and everything, she had like a big towel that was soaked in blood on top of that. I was holding pressure on that because I thought she was shot in the chest.
Wow.
And stuff though, but her main only wound that she had was in the leg. Because the guy told me, no, she's shot in the chest. So that's why one of the witnesses did. And stuff, so that's what I thought she was shot in the chest. So I'm applying pressure to the wrong wound, but the other wound already had like some makeshift tourniquet that had already tied it up really well. That I didn't see any blood coming out of her. Like she was wearing shorts.
Again, that's an example of how chaotic a scene can be. You know, you're sitting here trying to assess, what's going on. You're thinking, hey, you got people advising you. You're just trying to assess everything, and it's.
I have to ask you, Trey. You're sitting here describing this, and you're just like matter of fact, like I'm just done.
I know, that's what I was thinking too.
How do you take care of yourself? How do you compartmentalize it so that you can talk about it in the way that you're talking about it?
Deals like that to me. Like I said, everybody's threshold is different of things that are what bothers or what triggers people's stuff. To me, like I said before, when it involves the death of a child, those mess with me. Seeing the adults and stuff like that get shot, or like murder scenes and stuff like that. Those
doesn't process.
That's not one of my triggers, I guess you could say. At least it hasn't been. I'm not saying that maybe tomorrow it wouldn't be when I go back to work next Wednesday. But, I mean, I'm just saying thus far in my career, just when it comes to having to deal with two separate calls involving dead children, those kind of haunted me for a little bit. But you're right. You go with your buddies, you talk it out, and you deal with it, and you somehow find a way to, like I said, pain shared is pain divided.
But you do talk about it, though. That's the question. I mean, do you?
Yes.
Well, and I'm just sitting here looking at TK behind you, your wife, and I'm thinking I really want to get her on another podcast because I would love to hear about secondary trauma, about how she experiences trauma through the conversations that you have with her, because I know that is a big thing for spouses.
I mean, I know if I heard half the stories he's telling me now, I'd freak out as a wife. Like, no, you do. You're heightened. I mean, I've been one of those wives, but and you learn to just figure out what needs to be cut out and what needs to be processed because of all the outside chatter that will come into a wife or a spouse,
It's funny you bring that up because this is something that I've talked with TK about before because when we first got together, we both had been divorced. And, like I said, we basically just talked about all the stuff that we both had been through, and it helped us, work out a lot of stuff. By knowing where somebody's been, you kind of understand where they're going or how they feel about certain things. And I was involved I signed up and volunteered for a really come to be what we found out later would be a little bit more dangerous operation than normal. And so long story short, my ex had a problem with it. She was mad at me for volunteering for it. I said, well, hey, this is what you married. This is what I am. This is what I got to go do. And stuff. So go to the assignment, and then sure enough, it ends up in a shooting. And so I call on the way, said, hey, look, I don't know when I'll be home. We're going to, it's going to be a big deal kind of thing. And she goes, okay, fine, bye. Click, hung up on me. My buddy looks at me because he had just called his wife because he was also involved, and his wife is awesome. And she's like, okay, just be careful. I love you. Take care.
Yeah.
Like everybody's okay kind of deal. And the normal response you expect. So then I call mine because we're both on speaker because we still have to do Overwatch.
Yeah.
And so long story short, and she just hangs up on me. My buddy looks at me and goes, what the hell was that? I said, dude, it's a long story. And it never got fixed after that. It only went downhill from that point on because there were big time. Anytime being a team leader, planning ops, I'd have to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and go do an early morning hit. I'd always hear about it. I mean, there was always an issue when it came to doing my job. And so it built up a lot of resentment. So, and I even tried to talk to it, being to a counselor and everything else, but it just one of those kind of deals that I think that, I don't know, Eden wasn't burning, it was burnt.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It just wasn't any fixing it at that point in her eyes, I guess, because
it wasn't the life she wanted.
Correct. It ended up starting out wanting to be with that guy, but ended up not wanting to be.
Even though she knew what she's getting herself into.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying there's other contributing factors.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm just saying, but that was one deal. I'm like, why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
She goes, I told you not to go. I'm like, well, you can't tell me not to do that. That's my job.
Yeah.
And stuff. So anyway, long story short, I mean, it does have an effect on the spouse. TK has been my rock. Has been very supportive. Been awesome. So I tell you what, I mean, broke the mold after her.
Oh, she's
That's
beautiful
awesome.
too.
I mean, seriously,
She is beautiful.
She's been very
and
supportive.
she's sweet and funny, and she probably holds your butt together. I'm just saying.
Hey,
Somebody's got to.
Yeah,
Somebody's
it's a lot
got
of work.
to.
It's a lot of work.
So it's been so interesting having you on, Trey. Is there anything that you personally want to share about your role or your job or
Listeners, anything you want anybody to hear?
It's actually, like I said, I'm only going to have about another 5 or 6 years, I hope, knock on wood. But I tell you what, it was worth doing it. I mean, my dad told me a long time ago that if you love what you do for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. And he couldn't have been more.
I love
It's
that
true.
saying.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's the truth. I tell you what, like I said, I worked for Chevrolet. I would get off work at 6, and I would go to work at Forney PD. Even though I've worked all day in the heat or at the dealership, I would go from 6 at night till 6 in the morning at PD. Did it every Friday for 2 years because I loved it. It was fun. And it's still, to a degree, it's still somewhat fun. I mean, it's getting harder to be as fun, obviously, but it's still a good job. It is a good, noble job, and we need good people doing those jobs. And so, yeah, it's a recruiting deal. It's up a little bit, but as far as, like I said, the same thing as a pendulum. It'll swing a little bit back and forth. I'm hoping that, that it will pick back up to where we are getting good candidates, especially as many people that are coming out of the military. For all those listening, that if you are a prior military guy, we're constantly hiring, and we waive college for military service.
Wow, and
Oh,
let me
that's
tell you,
great.
Garland PD is, I'm telling you, they are some bad boys, and
There's
in a
some
good
really good
way.
ones.
They're
Yeah.
bad boys in a good way. But yeah, I mean,
our chief does take a fairly aggressive stance,
Yeah.
on stuff like that, especially when it comes to crime and everything, to where within reason. I mean, there's some things. For instance, you're not going to use the SWAT team now to go knock down the door to go get a drug dealer that sells marijuana. You're just not. When you have a DA that's not even prosecuting it.
yeah.
So that being said, within reason and stuff, he does. We flock cameras, you name it. We do a lot of stuff to help try to recover stolen vehicles. We do a lot of stuff to help deter a lot of crime. Our NPO unit's as big as it's ever been, and they work really, really well with council and crime watch groups to try to deter crime in the neighborhoods and everything. Our SRO program is pretty good. We have. I can't remember how many we have. I think 26 SROs in all the schools and middle schools and stuff.
yeah.
So
I love
I
having
do
the officers in the
too.
school.
I
and
do
the,
too.
And the kids do
it's
too.
necessary.
Oh, you have to now. I mean, to me, if I was the chief, I would make sure that all of them were in the rifle program. I mean, because if you look at it, I mean, you've seen things happen in the past, and I'm not going to trash talk other departments or other agencies and stuff like that, but you've seen people that sometimes people forget. Police officers are normal people too. They have a family at home that they worry about, but it's okay to be scared. It's what you do when you're scared. Just like John Wayne said, you still have a job to do. You have to go do it. And I have learned that the more you train, whether it be physically or at the range, or go to combat shooting classes, go to whatever. There's tons of training out there by tier 1 guys that have been in the sandbox for 20 years. Go to other trainings, get more confident in your skills. And I tell people all the time, hey, if you suck at shooting, we have open shoots. Go shoot. Because
Okay.
your life may, or my life, or so innocent civilian's life may depend on it someday.
Yeah.
So if you're that big 300-pound guy that eats donuts and stuff like that, and you can't run down the hall, what good are you going to be to me if I'm in a fight for my life over a 6-foot fence?
Yeah.
Go to the gym, stay in shape, do what you've got to do to be better, because someday your life may depend on it.
100%. And I want all of our listeners out there to help us swing this pendulum. Let's let our police officers know how much we appreciate the work they do. We want to get recruitment up. We want to help make sure that police officers are feeling the love that they need to feel, because they make this choice every single day to put their life on the line, and we need to show appreciation for that.
Well, Trey, thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with any mental health issues, we want you to reach out to a friend, a trusted family member, somebody you trust. We want you to get connected with a professional. If you are having self-harm thoughts or suicidal thoughts, we want you to get immediate help. Dial 911, go to the nearest ER, or you can call the National Suicide Hotline at 988. We at Mental Perk want you to know you're worthy. We're in this together.